I'll discuss Roman Reigns and how he was utilized in this Rumble at the very end. So the second entrant was Rusev, and poor Rusev just has not had any momentum since returning from his injury. Rumor has it that WWE is punishing both him and Lana for announcing their engagement publicly, kind of putting an end to that really shitty storyline. Although personally, they should probably kiss Rusev's feet for bringing a merciful end to that storyline. But for the most part, it seems like the gimmick with Rusev is that apparently he's has difficulty getting it up or has a small dick or something like that. I've heard that The Rock and Lana apparently had an interaction that sort of implies that she's not as virtuous as she thinks, or at least as she's trying to make us think. And it sounds really horrible to me, and that's never a good way to put somebody over. Rusev deserves so much more, and he didn't last very long before he was taken out by Roman Reigns. The third entrant was AJ Styles. Now, I'm not familiar with AJ Styles' work. I know of him, though. And so I didn't even realize he had signed with the WWE. So this was a big surprise for me, and it was really cool. I actually liked how Roman Reigns, his facial expressions when he came out, he's like, "What? Who's this? Oh, shit." And that was kind of cool. I thought his first battle with Roman Reigns was actually pretty exciting. He has an interesting look, and I'm curious to see what they do with AJ Styles in the future. I thought he performed very well in this Rumble. He lasted, I think, almost 30 minutes. Now, after he had his initial brawl with Roman Reigns, he just kind of faded into the background, became part of the crowd. That happens with Royal Rumble matches. You know, a new entrant will come in, they will briefly dominate, have their moment to stand out, and then they'll just become another person in this match until they get eliminated. And with AJ Styles, I think Spoonie, I guess, was really criticizing him on Twitter, or criticizing how he was used on Twitter. I think part of the problem was he took so long to come out and kind of pander to the crowd that there wasn't a whole lot of time for him to have his clash with Roman Reigns. But still, what we got I thought was pretty cool. Number 4, Tyler Breeze. Boy, I knew Tyler Breeze would never succeed on the main roster. Even though he is a very talented individual, he plays his role very well. NXT, you could get away with that, but for whatever reason, the main roster, it's the same thing every time, whether it's Adam Rose, Fandango, or now Tyler Breeze. They'll start off with a lot of momentum, they'll get quite a bit of screen time, they'll win matches, they'll win their early feuds, and then they get demoted to extra and start losing more often than not. I just knew that would happen, and that's what's already going down with him. I didn't get why they broke up him and Summer Rae. I actually thought they worked pretty well together, but whatever. He didn't last very long before he was eliminated, so he's just rumble padding. Curtis Axel. Okay, so the Social Outcasts, I think that their group is kind of annoying, but at the same time, I will say that they seem to be having fun, and it's nice seeing them have a role in the company once more. I've actually grown to like Curtis Axel, Heath Slater, and even Adam Rose on various levels. I think they're all talented individuals who deserve more than what they're getting, but at the same time, I don't see them as being upper card performers or even firmly on the mid card. I kind of feel like every chance they had to make the Social Outcasts stand out and be interesting just sort of fell on its face. For one, nobody knows if these guys are heels or baby faces. It seems to change on a weekly basis. But like Big Show, he had his squash match with, I think, Heath Slater, and then the other Outcasts jumped him, but Big Show just destroyed them all. I don't think that was necessary. In my opinion, Big Show should have squashed Heath Slater, and then the Social Outcasts team up on him and actually take the Big Show down. That would be a way to make them seem kind of threatening for this Royal Rumble event. Big Show does not really need to get too many victories, even though it's nice when he does, because he has such a history, and usually he is portrayed as a threat regardless of who he's going up against. Mark Henry, on the other hand, usually isn't that dangerous in his matches anymore. Big Show, yeah, he loses all of his more important matches, but he at least puts up a really good fight. So I think it would have been fine to have him kind of put over the social outcasts. But nope, and Curtis Axel doesn't really last very long before being taken out. I was surprised that the other social outcasts weren't in this Rumble. They do kind of get involved, but it's just so they get on the ring apron and get knocked down by AJ Styles and Roman Reigns. So this whole thing seemed worthless and disappointing. Chris Jericho. Now, since Chris Jericho returned, I thought his segments have been oddly terrible. When he banter with the New Day, I thought his attempts to be funny were really awkward and just embarrassing. And it seems to me like he knows that what he's being given to say sucks. So because there's no real enthusiasm or passion in his delivery of his promos. And when he does try to be taken seriously, like in his confrontation with Paul Heyman, I just couldn't, because he'd say things like, but what if it comes down to Y2J and Brock Lesnar? And what happens if Y2J throws Lesnar over the top rope and becomes the World Heavyweight Championship? And I'm thinking, well, what if Curtis Axel did the same thing? Anybody can say that. What if whatever happens? That's not really hyping you up at all. Plus, as Paul Heyman pointed out, the last time Jericho interacted with Lesnar, it went very badly for him. So I love Chris Jericho, but he's been given shit to work with since coming back. But I will say that he was actually utilized very well in this Royal Rumble match. For one, he lasted a very long time. I liked how they paid a little attention to continuity when he got eliminated at the very end by Dean Ambrose, and they pointed out how in Night of Champions, Chris Jericho kind of snubbed Dean Ambrose. And I thought it was also kind of dumb how Roman Reigns didn't seem to have any problems with Chris Jericho despite this, and like the Raw prior to this pay-per-view. So at least that was kind of cool here. But also, as I said, with most Royal Rumble participants, they have their moment to shine, and then they kind of fade into the background before they're eliminated. Well, Chris Jericho actually managed to capture the spotlight multiple times throughout this Royal Rumble, and that's not easy to do. And so I thought he was very impressive with how he was used here. Didn't quite make up for the shit that he's been doing leading up to this, but that was at least pretty cool. Kane, not a whole lot I could say with him, because since the last time he fought on the pay-per-view, he hasn't done a whole lot. I think he had a few confrontations with Bray Wyatt, but otherwise, I kind of like the fact that he's in this part-time role right now. It makes his appearances more impactful. I think audiences were overexposed to him for the past few years, but he did fine here. I think he lasted about 20 minutes. Seemed dominant, and that's really all I have to say about him. Goldust, ever since he returned, WWE has done nothing with him, and he barely did anything in this match, so he's just Rumble filler. Ryback really has kind of fallen from grace in the eyes of the WWE, because he's been putting over the more important players. He's been putting the more important players over. He gets involved with like the social outcasts at times. I did like how competitive some of the mid-card performers were when it came to the Royal Rumble. That's part of what made it feel more important. I liked how the Wyatts would randomly attack Ryback, who would be fighting with the Big Show, and there would be certain alliances briefly formed, and various performers would attack each other, just once again leading up to the Rumble, not this match itself. I thought that was pretty cool, but for the most part, Ryback's not very important right now. He did fine in this Rumble. Lasted a little over 10 minutes, but nothing especially memorable. Kofi Kingston, of course, he would be the New Day representative. His yearly spot was all right. When he landed on Big E's shoulders. And I actually kind of like how he's just sort of running around for a while. I don't even know if he really got back in the ring. It worked with the New Day characterization. So I was satisfied with that. Whereas last year it seemed like just the spot. They've run out of ideas how to use Kofi Kingston. But still, the way they used it here I thought was very fitting for the character. Titus O'Neil, just also with Ryback. Ryback got shat upon by the audience, which once again makes me think that they're trolling. Titus O'Neil also got a lot of boos, even though he was trying to pump him up. Nothing I could really say with him. When did he and Darren Young break up? He has a lot of charisma and he has a good physique, but for whatever reason, WWE doesn't know what to do with him. And he had some like sub story with Stardust that Hulu mostly cut out, so I can't even criticize that. So Titus O'Neil just kind of was there. It lasted a little under 10 minutes before being taken out by the Big Show. R-Truth, okay, he had his LOL moment. I remember that part leading up to Money in the Bank when he thought he was doing the Intercontinental Championship match, and he realized after Kane reminded him that he wasn't even part of the Money in the Bank contract matchup. That was actually really funny. I loved that comedic bit, and I thought it was cool that he won the Slammy for it, but then afterwards it's like they just overdid it to the point where it just stopped being funny. It started getting annoying. So at least this seems like it's the end of the joke, and it was kind of it was an alright payoff. I was amused enough when he came in with a ladder, crawls to the top only to realize he's in the wrong match. But still, it's still dumb, even though it did get a chuckle out of me. So I hope that this is it. I never want to see this joke again. And then he just gets eliminated by Kane after 30 seconds. Luke Harper, fodder for the Wyatts. He lasted a while, but it never really stood out to me. I was surprised that he was the first of the Wyatt family to come out. I figured Rowan would be it because I think they'd go based on the pecking order from least important to most important, but Harper was the first. Stardust, WWE has no idea what to do with Stardust. And he was just there. Nothing really stood out with him either. Big Show, he comes in. He didn't last very long, but he's very dominant. He took out Ryback and Titus O'Neil. And then he took on Braun Strowman. And I'll come back to that in a moment when I discuss Braun Strowman. Big Show, I have no problem with how he was used in building up to the Rumble. In my opinion, Big Show should be more like a part-time talent, only appear on television sporadically, but I thought the whole thing with the Social Outcasts could have still been better. Neville, I don't like how he's been the damsel in distress in the Owens versus Ambrose storyline, but still, at least he seems to have a steady position on the mid-card right now. A lot of the NXT call-ups usually peak and then immediately fall down. Neville seems like he's doing pretty well for himself. I want him to start competing for some championship. But granted, since both Ambrose and Kalisto are baby faces, I don't know where they will finally get him in there. In terms of how he was used here, he looked fine, but nothing once again stood out as crazy. He lasted about 10 minutes. Braun Strowman. Okay, this is where things get a little weird. Let me check the time. So I'm going to come back to this after this break.